Alright, so we've got an interior door that needs to be replaced. As you can tell, it looks like somebody tried to kick this thing in or out. It's completely disconnected right there. So the first step is obviously you just got to get the door off the wall. You're going to do that with a regular Phillips screwdriver. Just remove the screws from the hinges and remove the doorknob assembly, and then we'll take it out there and I'll show you how to make sure you cut your new door to fit the second door. But before we do anything, one of the first things you want to do, if this one will close, is before you go to do anything, check the gap on your existing door, including down at the floor, and make sure you like that gap, because we're going to carbon copy this door. So if the gap isn't good on this door, it's not going to be good on the door that we put on if we do a carbon copy of this. So check your gap, take off your doorknob, take off your hinges, and then I'll meet you out there for the next step. Okay, so next is I've got the new door on the floor, the one that I just purchased. These are going to come in increments of 2 inches in terms of width. You're going to have 24-inch ones, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, etc. So I take my new door and I put it down here on the floor, and then I take the old door that I just now removed and lay it down on top. So I'm going to take this front edge here and I'm going to get it flush, top to bottom, front to back, completely flush. And then the important part's going to be this hole here. Everything we're doing all centers down to this hole and making sure that this falls in exactly the same place. So I'm going to scooch this over, and now these holes line up absolutely perfectly, and the front edge of the door where it closes up against the frame is also lined up perfectly. And then you just come to the back and you just take this nice straight edge that you have from the edge of your door, which is all perfectly lined up, the new door and the old door, and you can just make your mark all the way down. This is what you're going to be trimming off, and you never want to trim this from the front. If you trim this from the front, then your doorknob is not going to work. So you have to line up the doorknob and then come over here and trim off the back. The top is still flush, so whoever installed the last door didn't need to do anything there. And the bottom, I actually have about a 1/2 inch that I could cut off down here, but I'm not going to cut it off because I saw quite a large gap from the bottom of the old door to the floor. So I'm going to leave that extra here, and if I need to, I'll come back and I'll trim it just a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to need to. So the next step after this, once you've got everything marked, is going to be to go ahead and trim this off. And when you go to trim this off, you don't need any sawhorses or anything. I'm trying to show you all the fastest and most efficient way, and the most efficient way is just to pop your new door up on top of your old door and then set your blade on your skill saw so that it's not going to go from the top of this door all the way to the floor. Alright, so I've adjusted my blade depth so that it can't touch the floor. I can even slide my whole hand under it. So the next step is just to cut off this strip that we marked earlier. Just going to get lined up and drop right down into it. Alright, you got your strip cut off from the door. Go ahead and break a little chunk off. You're going to need that. Alright, so once you've got it cut, you're going to stand them back up together. Again, these doors are facing the same way. I've got the doorknob hole lined up with everything. So you're going to stand these guys back up and take this extra piece of wood that you saved and just line it up with your hinge slot there. Make a mark. Line it up with the other side of your hinge mortise. Make another mark. And then you can take your hinge. Now, I don't know if y'all can see too well, but there's a little 1/8 inch where you put this in. There's about an 1/8 inch left. So when we come over here to copy it, we're going to try to leave that same 1/8 inch. If you're off by something like a 1/16, it really isn't going to matter, but just line that guy up in between your lines here. And as soon as you like the way it looks, go ahead and trace it out, and then repeat this step on both of the other hinges. Now, the next part that we have to do here, y'all may need a little bit of help with. but this is a straight bit. You're gonna need a router and you're gonna need a straight bit in your router. And what you wanna do is you wanna set the depth of that straight bit so that it's the same as the hinge, or even ever so slightly deeper than the hinge, but just barely, if at all. But you want that bit to be lined up with the hinge, and then you're gonna use this to mortise out the hinge slots that we just now marked off with these. All right, I'm not gonna make y'all listen to that router there for sure, so I'm just gonna tell you this is the part where you use your router to mortise out the hinges. And once you've got everything all mortised out, just go ahead and put your hinge in there and make sure you got a good fit, make sure it's flush. This one feels good. So now I'm gonna do the other two. All right, and the next step is gonna be getting the hinges back on. Make sure you pre-drill these. These will split every single time if you don't pre-drill them. Make sure that your pin is sticking up and not down, obviously. Get the hinges back in there. When you put these screws down in here, right at this point, you're not going to drive them in all the way. You're gonna leave a teeny tiny little gap, and that's gonna give you some wiggle room when you go to put it back on the frame to get all the slots to line up just right. All right, and then finally, guys, get the door hung back up on the frame. Get the last of your screws in. Now, when you drive these screws in, don't drive them in too hard because you'll strip everything out. And then you'll have to plug the hole. It's gonna cause you extra work. So get it in, come around here, shut the door, check the gaps. Make sure you still like the way the gaps look. I like that one. I feel like we still have quite a large gap on the bottom, and I left that extra ½ inch on there. But there's the door. All that's left now is to throw a coat of paint on it, put the doorknob on. All right, guys, we're all finished up. We got the door installed, we got the doorknob on, the gap all the way around here looks real nice. The latch works nicely. Everything's good to go. So let's talk about pricing on a door like this. To add this to an existing job, so not a one-off where I got to come all the way to this property just to do this door. To add this to an existing job has always been, for me, a minimum of about $200. I think I'm going to be going up closer to $250 soon, but it's always been a minimum of $200. The time took about an hour because I had to move a camera around. Usually it's about 45 minutes, but call it an hour to install this for $200. You're looking at $200 an hour right off the bat. That does not include paint. I charge an extra $75 for painting the door, so otherwise they can have the tenants paint it or they can paint it themselves. Sometimes they don't want to pay good money for somebody to just paint. So this is it, guys. $200 labor minimum, 1 hour of work. We're all said and done. It's painted. I just got a couple other things to wrap up here, and then I'll be loading up the tools and hitting the road.